Welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill by now. You send us the articles, the notes, all the raw material, and we step in.
We step in to be your guides.
Exactly. We cut through all the noise, and our job is to give you that deeply analyzed, actionable core of what you really need to know.
And today's topic is a big one.
Yeah.
It's something that is, I think, universally challenging for anyone on a language journey. It doesn't matter what your level is.
Not at all.
We're talking about speaking confidence,
Mm.
about finding that flow, and maybe the biggest piece of the puzzle, getting rid of that fear, that deep-seated fear of actually opening your mouth and just using the language.
And the sources we have today are they're beautifully structured. It's like a real roadmap. The author calls them the 10 pillars of speaking confidence. And this isn't just some random list of, oh, you could try this. These are 10 simple but really powerful, interconnected ideas. They're designed to completely shift your relationship with English.
To take it from fearful to fluent.
Yes, exactly that.
And that's our mission today,
Right.
It's not just to read you a list. Anyone can do that. That's the surface level.
Right.
Our mission is to take you on a proper deep dive into why these pillars actually work. We want to unpack the psychology behind them, maybe a little bit of the neurobiology of how we learn language, and critically, how you can actually integrate them into your day-to-day life.
Without it feeling like this huge new burden you have to carry.
Exactly. Without that feeling of overwhelm, we're aiming to give you the comprehensive shortcut here.
And the source material, it keeps coming back to one central philosophy. It's this really crucial, overarching idea that we have to keep in mind through this whole conversation.
Which is?
That improvement isn't, it's not a finish line. It's not some sudden destination you arrive at. It is a slow, gradual buildup.
An accumulation.
Yes. It relies completely on these small, almost insignificant seeming steps that you just repeat over and over again, consistently.
And that's the key word, isn't it? Consistency. Not volume, not intensity. The only thing that really matters here is consistency. And if you can accept that one premise,
then everything else makes sense.
the other 9 pillars just fall right into place.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's jump straight into section 1, because to build anything that lasts, you need a solid foundation.
The right mental foundation.
And this first section is all about that. It's the psychological groundwork, it's practice, it's patience, and it's giving yourself permission to be imperfect.
That crucial permission to err.
We're looking at tips 1, 2, and 10 right out of the gate, all about the mindset.
Okay, let's start with number 1, which is, I think, maybe the most practical and honestly the biggest psychological relief on this whole list.
Which is?
Speak a little every day.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because when people hear practice every day, their minds they spiral.
They picture this huge commitment.
A huge, grueling, hour-long session they have to do. They think, I need to hire a tutor, or I have to find a language partner, or I've got to block out this huge chunk of my evening when I'm already wiped out from work.
And that feeling, that high sense of obligation, is the very thing that stops people from ever starting. Or, if they do start, it's why they don't stick with it.
It's the classic failure point for so many learning strategies, isn't it? The ambition kills the execution.
Absolutely. But the power of this pillar, and the source is so specific about this, is its intentionally low commitment. It explicitly says you do not need an hour.
You don't even need a teacher.
You don't. It says just 2 minutes of speaking is enough. And that ridiculously low barrier to entry is a psychological game changer for building consistency.
2 minutes. I mean, that's nothing. That's the time it takes to brush your teeth. It's barely enough time to scroll through a couple of posts on social media.
Right.
But why is it so powerful? Is it just a mind trick to get you to start, or is there something real, something physical going on?
It's both. It is absolutely both, and you really have to understand the physical and the neurological side to truly respect this tip.
Okay.
So, if you look at the science of habit formation, the hardest part of creating a new habit is the beginning. It's the cue and the actual start of the action. If the barrier to starting is just 2 minutes, your brain doesn't even put up a fight.
There's no resistance.
You completely bypass the resistance. It's too small to argue with. So even on your worst day, when you're tired, when you're sick, when you're busy, you can still find 2 minutes. You maintain the chain.
You don't break the habit loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's go deeper on that physical component, because you asked about it. The source uses this fantastic line. It says, your mouth needs practice just like your brain. It's completely reframed speaking. It's not just this high-level intellectual exercise. It's a motor skill. It's a physical act of articulation.
Like learning an instrument.
Precisely. Think about learning to play the piano or even just learning a new dance move. Your muscles, they need that daily repetition to build muscle memory. If you only practice articulating English sounds and connecting words once a week,
You're always starting from cold.
you're always cold. Your muscles, your tongue, your jaw, your lips, your throat, they get stiff.
Yeah.
The effort feels labored and frustrating every single time.
I love that framing. Thinking of fluency as a muscle memory exercise, it takes all the pressure off. You don't have to be intellectually brilliant or grammatically perfect in those 120 seconds.
Not at all.
The focus shifts. It's just about the simple physical act of articulation, just staying warm.
You're just keeping the engine warm. You are literally building and reinforcing neuromuscular pathways. And the examples the source gives for how to do this, they couldn't be simpler.
You don't need anyone else.
No partner needed. Talk to yourself. Look around your room and just describe the objects you see, or just narrate what you're doing in that moment.
So if I'm making coffee,
You say, okay, I'm getting the coffee beans. I need to grind them now. I'm pouring the water into the machine. That's it. You've fulfilled your daily quota. You've ensured the mechanics of English stay loose, and that habit loop stays unbroken.
it's so simple it almost feels like cheating.
But it's profoundly effective.
Okay, so if the minimum viable practice is just 2 minutes, we need the right mental framework to actually sustain that. And that leads us perfectly into tip number 2. And this one might be the single most important pillar for building long-term confidence. It's don't worry about mistakes.
This
Yeah.
is fundamental. The universal confidence killer for every language learner is self-censorship.
That little voice in your head.
That voice that stops you mid-sentence, or sometimes even before you've said the first word, because you're already catastrophizing. You're worried about using the wrong tense, the wrong preposition.
Well, the little things.
And this source it radically reframes the entire concept of a mistake. It says, and I'm quoting here, mistakes are not enemies, they're signs of learning.
That is such a radical shift from how almost all of us were taught, isn't it? In school, mistakes were failures.
They were things to be avoided at all costs.
They got a red pen circled around them, a deduction of points. But here, they're literally being defined as badges of effort, as indicators that you're exploring the language.
Exactly. And we have to actively, consciously, deprogram that anxiety from our formal education. A mistake is just a feedback loop for your brain. It's data.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you never try to form a complex sentence because you're terrified of messing up the conditional tense, your brain never gets the data it needs to actually learn the conditional tense structure.
You have to make the error to learn from it.
The error provides the context for the correction. Without the attempt, there is no learning.
And the analogy the source uses to really drive this point home is just, it's so powerful and so relatable. It's the comparison with babies learning to talk.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant because it cuts right through the adult learner's ego and all that self-consciousness.
Right.
A baby, when it's learning to speak, makes hundreds, maybe thousands of mistakes a day. Pronouncing vowels wrong, mixing up word order, just inventing new words entirely. And the source says nobody stops them.
Nobody stops them. In fact, it's the opposite, isn't it? They're celebrated.
They're celebrated just for trying to communicate. The entire environment around them is one of total acceptance and encouragement.
Right. If a toddler says, where mommy putted the ball, you don't scold them, you get the ball.
You get the ball, and maybe later you gently correct them by repeating the right sentence back. Oh, mommy put the ball over there. But you celebrate the attempt. You celebrate the fact that they successfully communicated their idea.
So that's the natural learning environment we have to create for ourselves as adults.
We have to consciously build it for ourselves. The source advises us to let your English grow the same way naturally, just acknowledging that mistakes are an inevitable, necessary, and actually a good part of the growth curve. It just turns down the volume on that internal critic.
It reduces the self-censorship.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
It gives you permission to prioritize getting your meaning across over being grammatically perfect. And that is the only way that real confidence can ever begin to grow.
Okay, so tip 1 is about consistency. Tip 2 is about radical self-forgiveness, accepting that error is necessary. So let's round out this foundational mindset section with tip 10. We're skipping ahead a bit.
But it makes perfect sense to group it here.
It really does, because tip 10 is the sustainability factor. It's what ties the first 2 together and makes them last. It is enjoy the process.
This is so critical because learning a language is not a short sprint. It's a marathon. It could last for years, maybe even a lifetime.
Right.
And if you don't find some kind of genuine enjoyment in the day-to-day process, you will not stick with it. It doesn't matter how disciplined you are at the start. Burnout is inevitable. Sustainability demands satisfaction.
How do you define enjoyment, especially when you're in that phase where you're struggling to form a basic sentence or you feel embarrassed that you still can't express complex ideas quickly? It doesn't feel very enjoyable.
It doesn't. And that's why the source breaks it down. It says you have to redefine enjoyment. It's not about enjoying being perfect. It's about enjoying the small, tangible steps, what we often call the small wins.
So you're shifting the focus.
You are completely shifting the focus away from the huge, impossible long-term goal of being perfectly fluent to the immediate, achievable reality of, hey, I successfully did my 2 minutes today, or I used a new word today.
You have to actively hunt for those small wins and then actually celebrate them.
Yes. You're not enjoying the frustration of forgetting a word. You're enjoying the feeling of smoothly articulating a short sentence today that felt clunky and awkward yesterday.
It sounds like you're consciously linking the daily practice from tip 1 to a positive psychological reward,
Right.
creating a positive feedback loop.
That's exactly what it is. It's how you manage your own internal motivation. You're creating these tangible daily moments that release those little feel-good chemicals in your brain. And the source connects this back to the sensory experience, which I love. It says, enjoy the sound of new words.
And enjoy the progress you feel in your voice.
Yes. Maybe today you noticed your intonation was a little more natural after doing some shadowing. Or maybe you successfully used a new phrase in your 2-minute practice. That feeling, that tiny moment of success, that's the fuel for the next day's practice.
It's a powerful anchor. It moves the idea of enjoyment from some abstract, far-off goal to the tangible, controllable present moment. And when you put those 3 pillars together, the consistent, tiny practice of tip 1, the radical acceptance of mistakes from tip 2, and seeking enjoyment in the daily progress of tip 10, you build this incredibly resilient foundational mindset.
It's a mindset that makes the other 7 tips actually possible instead of just being nice ideas on a list.
Right. You've given yourself permission to try, and you have a structure that guarantees you a small success every single day.
Now you're ready to start building on that foundation.
Which brings us to section 2. We have the mindset right. Now we need to feed the machine. We need to get some quality language data in there.
Exactly. This next section is all about what we're calling the input engine. It's about training your ears and acquiring the language units you need to build with. This is where we lay the acoustic foundation for natural-sounding speech.
And we start with tip 3, which I think can feel a bit counterintuitive for a lot of people, especially if their one goal is to improve their speaking.
I could see that.
The tip is listen more than you speak. My first reaction is, wait, why should I spend more time listening? Shouldn't I be maximizing my speaking time?
It's a classic and understandable question, but it's based on a misunderstanding of how we acquire language. This is all about the critical principle of input precedes output.
A classic concept in language acquisition.
A classic concept that gets ignored all the time when a learner is just obsessed with forcing themselves to produce language before they're ready. The source is very direct and very clear about this. Good speaking comes from good listening, period.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanism. Why? Why does listening directly improve my ability to physically move my mouth and form sentences? How does that connection work?
This is where we really get into the deep dive. When you listen, your brain is doing so much more than just understanding the meaning of the words. It's building an acoustic map. It's creating an architectural blueprint of the language.
Okay.
The source explains it like this. Listen every day, even in the background. Your ears will start training your mouth.
That sounds almost magical. How does my ear train my mouth?
Think about it this way. Your brain is, at its core, a pattern recognition machine. It's what it does best. When you listen consistently to podcasts, to native speakers on YouTube, to movies, your brain starts to internalize the patterns.
Not just the words?
Not just the words. The natural cadence, the rhythm, the common phrases that go together, and crucially, the sentence structures that just flow naturally in English. When native speakers talk, we're not consciously sitting there assembling every word based on grammar rules we learned in a book.
Okay, you're just talking.
We're retrieving ready-made patterns and chunks of language that we've heard thousands of times. Your listening provides your brain with those patterns.
So, By listening all the time, my brain is unconsciously mapping the flow of the language. It's learning the architecture, so that when I go to speak, my mouth isn't starting from scratch. It has a pre-existing map that my ears created for it.
That's it, exactly. And the effect of that is enormous. It drastically reduces the cognitive load of speaking.
What do you mean by cognitive load?
If you haven't listened much, when you want to say something, you have to do about 5 things at once in real time. You have to think of the idea in your native language, translate it, select the right vocabulary, apply a grammatical rule, and check your pronunciation.
It's exhausting just listing it.
It is. It's mentally exhausting. But if you have listened extensively, your brain bypasses a lot of those steps. It just retrieves the structure it already knows is correct. Oh, I've heard that pattern 100 times. The reduction in that mental work, that is what directly leads to more flow and speed in your speech.
And the sources give us some really practical examples for input. Podcasts, short videos, movies, which seems to support the idea of passive exposure, right? It doesn't always have to be this intense, active study session with a notepad.
Not at all. Passive exposure is fantastic for building that foundational app, especially on days when you're too tired for active study. Put on a podcast while you're commuting or doing the dishes.
You're still getting the input.
You're keeping that input stream flowing, which honors the consistency principle from tip 1. You're just soaking up the music of the language.
And speaking of music, that's a perfect lead-in to tip 4, because building on that foundation of just listening, this tip introduces a very specific, very technical, and for many people, a totally revolutionary practice.
It really can be.
And that is practice with shadowing.
Shadowing is the critical bridge. It's what connects the passive input we just talked about in tip 3 to the active physical output we're aiming for. It literally forces you to synchronize what you're hearing with what you're producing.
And it's one of the fastest ways to improve pronunciation and maybe even more importantly, rhythm and intonation.
Yes. So let's define it very precisely, because it's a term people often misunderstand. They confuse it with just simple repetition.
Right. This isn't listening to a sentence and then repeating it after it's finished.
No. The source defines shadowing as you listen to a sentence and repeat it at the same time. You're overlapping. You're like an echo that's just a second or two behind the original speaker.
That simultaneous overlapping action is the key to the whole technique.
It's everything. You're running just slightly behind the speaker, and you're trying to match their sounds, their pitch, their rhythm exactly as you hear them. The goal is explicitly stated. Copy the rhythm and copy the music of the language.
You're almost turning off the analytical part of your brain for a minute.
You are. You're engaging the purely mimetic physical part of your brain, the part that just copies.
I can imagine that feels incredibly weird at first. The source even says it feels strange, like dancing with someone's voice.
It does. It's a very strange sensation.
But why is it so effective? Why is that rhythm and intonation sometimes even more important for being understood than having perfect vocabulary or perfect grammar?
It's fascinating, really. It's because of how much information is carried in what linguists call prosody. That's the stress, the rhythm, the intonation of a language. And English is what's known as a stress-timed language.
What does that mean?
It means we naturally put more emphasis, more time and energy on the important content, words like nouns, main verbs, adjectives. And we tend to swallow or reduce the less important function, words, prepositions, articles, and so on.
So the rhythm itself carries meaning.
A huge amount of meaning. If you put the stress on the wrong syllable or the wrong word, even if you pronounce the individual sounds perfectly, a native speaker might really struggle to understand you. They might even mishear the word entirely.
Like the classic example of record, the noun, versus record, the verb.
Exactly. If you get that stress wrong, the listener has to stop, even for a millisecond, and do extra cognitive work to figure out what you meant. Shadowing trains your brain to automatically put that musical stress where it belongs.
You're internalizing the native pattern.
You're moving away from speaking like a robot reading a dictionary where every single syllable gets the same weight to speaking with natural flow and emphasis. It is the fastest, safest way to just download a native speaker's rhythm and delivery directly into your own mouth.
Okay, so we've trained the ears with tip 3. We've synchronized the rhythm with tip 4. Now, tip 5 focuses on what we're actually putting together to make our sentences.
The building blocks.
Yes. The tip is learn phrases, not standards.
This one is often the biggest aha moment for learners, especially high intermediate learners who feel like they've hit a plateau.
The ones who are stuck translating word for word from their native language.
Yes. And learning in these functional chunks or phrases is the express lane to speaking faster and more naturally. It fundamentally changes the raw material you're building your speech with.
The source gives some great examples to illustrate this contrast. Instead of learning isolated words from a vocabulary list like book, take, table.
You learn the functional phrases they live in, chunks like take a look or on the table, or common conversational openers like as a matter of fact, or can I ask you?
And that shift from single words to multi-word chunks, it's monumental from a cognitive processing perspective, isn't it?
It's huge. Let's break it down. When you learn take, a, and look as 3 separate items, every single time you want to express the idea of examining something, your brain has to perform 3 separate retrieval operations from your memory.
One for each word.
One for each word. Then it has to assemble them in the right order, apply the correct tense, all in real time while you're trying to have a conversation. That process is slow, it's very prone to error, and it's mentally exhausting.
That's the definition of cognitive friction. The brain just gets stuck in the assembly line.
It does. But if you learn the phrase take a look as one single unit, like one big data block,
You just retrieve the whole thing at once.
one retrieval operation. It's like downloading a single zip file instead of opening 3 separate programs and trying to sync them up. You have massively reduced the mental work of sentence construction.
Which frees up your brain power.
It frees up your working memory to focus on the most important thing, the actual content of your message, not the mechanics of the language you're using to deliver it.
And I can see immediately how that leads to smoother, more automatic speech. It's that automatization we're always chasing. These multi-word chunks become the real building blocks of fluent, natural communication.
And that's why this is also an input strategy. When you're listening, as in tip 3, you're not just listening for words anymore. You start actively listening for these chunks. You notice that native speakers don't say, I will give to you my opinion.
They say, in my view, or as far as I can tell.
Right. You're learning the functional grammar that's already built right into the phrases. It's a much more organic way to learn.
So now we've established the mindset, we've mastered the input. It feels like we're ready to move to the tactical stage.
We are. It's time to refine what we're actually producing.
Section 3 covers the elements of objective measurement, polishing your delivery, and reinforcing what you've learned.
Yeah, we have to move away from just having a subjective feeling about our speaking, Oh, I felt bad about that conversation. We need to move toward objective analysis.
Here are the 3 specific things I noticed and need to work on.
Exactly.
And we start with tip 6, which I think a lot of learners are going to dread this one, but the sources are clear. It is non-negotiable if you're serious about improving.
It really is. The tip is, record your own voice.
And we have to start by acknowledging how uncomfortable this is. The source even says, yes, it can feel uncomfortable.
It really can. Most people hate the sound of their own recorded voice, even in their native language. There's a built-in resistance we have to externalizing and analyzing our own performance.
But you have to push past that initial awkwardness.
You have to, because the benefit is just.
Yeah.
It's too essential to ignore.
So why is it so critical? Why can't I just rely on my gut feeling about how well I spoke in a conversation? Why isn't that enough?
Because your subjective feeling in the moment is a completely unreliable narrator. It's constantly being filtered through your performance anxiety, through the stress of the situation, and through real-time cognitive overload.
Right.
When you're speaking, you are so busy thinking about what you're going to say next, or how the listener's reacting, that you can't possibly accurately assess the words you just said or the intonation you used. Your brain just doesn't have the capacity.
So the goal of recording is to externalize your speech, to turn it from a performance into objective data that you can analyze later.
Precisely. It separates the performance from the analysis. You stop being the frazzled performer in the spotlight and you become the calm, objective coach on the sidelines.
And then you can listen back and notice things.
Real specific things. Like, oh, okay, I see that I'm always pausing when I'm searching for prepositions, or, hey, I successfully used that new phrase from tip 5, but my rhythm was a bit choppy.
And this directly addresses that huge confidence gap that so many learners have, right? That feeling of, I'm working so hard, but I don't feel like I'm improving at all.
It's the ultimate cure for that feeling. Because the greatest benefit here is tracking your progress over time. The source promises you'll notice progress that you didn't see before.
Because subjective improvement is almost impossible to measure day to day.
It is.
Yeah.
But if you record yourself for 2 minutes every Monday, after a month you can listen to week 1 and then week 4, and you will hear the difference. Hearing yourself speaking more smoothly or using a wider range of vocabulary, that is irrefutable, concrete evidence of your growth.
And that objective proof is the ultimate antidote to self-doubt.
It is.
Hmm?
And it feeds directly back into tip 10, enjoying the process. Nothing is more enjoyable than having proof that your effort is paying off.
That's a fantastic connection. Objective proof is the foundation of genuine self-confidence. Okay, let's move on to tip 7, which I think aggressively challenges a very deeply ingrained assumption that language learners have.
It really does.
That tip is slow down your speaking.
There is this common misconception, and it's usually driven by insecurity, that speaking fast means you sound good, that speed equals fluency.
Right. People rush their words because they're afraid of the silence, they're afraid the listener will think they're stupid or that they're searching for a word.
Or that they'll lose their listener's attention.
Yeah.
But what actually happens when you rush? You trip over your words, your pronunciation falls apart, your sentence structure breaks down, and your anxiety goes through the roof.
I've seen it happen so many times. The moment a speaker panics, they accelerate, and then the whole thing it collapses. And what's the golden rule here? What does the source say about pacing?
The source is crystal clear. This should be every learner's mantra. Clear is better than quick.
Velocity is meaningless if the communication fails.
Wholly meaningless. Clarity, deliberate articulation, good rhythm from your shadowing practice. Those are the true markers of effective speech. Speaking fast is not a sign of competence. Speaking clearly is.
But I know a lot of learners resist this. They feel like they sound slow or incompetent when they take their time. How do you get over that psychological hurdle?
You have to reframe it. You have to start seeing slow, deliberate speech as a sign of control and confidence. The practical advice from the source is simple. Take your time. Let your words breathe.
And what does that mean in practice, letting your words breathe?
It means intentionally using slight pauses. Not long, awkward silences, but very brief pauses between clauses, between phrases, between different thought units in your sentence.
And what does that strategic pausing do for you and for the person listening?
It has this crucial dual benefit. For the listener, your deliberate pacing makes you much, much easier to understand. They aren't being bombarded with a wall of rushed, compressed sound. It makes them feel respected and engaged.
And for the speaker?
More importantly, for you, the speaker, those little pauses give your own brain a few extra milliseconds to retrieve the next word or the next phrase. It prevents that full-blown panic response from kicking in.
It's a pressure release valve?
A tiny one, but it's enough. Reducing that internal pressure reduces your anxiety, which makes the whole experience less stressful. And, ironically, it ultimately leads to smoother, more natural-sounding delivery. Pacing yourself is actually the highest sign of competence and control.
That's excellent. Okay, so we're measuring objectively with tip 6. We're polishing our delivery with pacing in tip 7. So what's our final output refinement strategy?
Tip 8. Repeat the same topics.
Okay, this sounds interesting.
This is all about applying the other tips through intentional rehearsal to build automaticity. It ties directly back to that idea of muscle memory we talked about at the very beginning.
Right.
When you talk about familiar topics again and again, you are forcing your brain to solidify the language, the vocabulary, the phrases required for that specific context into these quick automatic retrieval pathways.
Okay, but I can hear the objection already. Someone might say, if I just describe my job or my hobbies over and over, won't I just be memorizing a script? Won't that stop me from learning how to improvise?
That's a great question, and it's a valid concern. But the goal isn't to memorize a script word for word forever. The goal is to move the core vocabulary, the transition phrases, and the common sentence structures for that topic out of your slow, conscious effort and into your fast, subconscious retrieval.
You're practicing the delivery of the information.
Exactly. You're not just practicing the information itself. And what kind of topics should you repeat? The source suggests the simple, recurring themes you know you'll encounter in real life.
Your job, your hobbies, your family, what you did on the weekend.
Your core conversation scripts? The repetition isn't boring. It's highly efficient, targeted training.
So the first time I try to talk about my job, I'm stumbling over all the technical vocabulary. But by the 5th time, I've practiced it.
By the 5th time, you've got the whole description chunked into these smooth, automatic phrases from tip 5, and your voice is steady and paced because of tip 7.
And each repetition is a chance to refine it a little more.
Exactly. Each time is a chance to incrementally improve your word choice, polish your phrasing, and solidify the grammar for that context. You're constantly iterating on your performance.
Yeah.
And the result is immediate and it's measurable.
The source says, you'll notice your sentence is becoming smoother each time.
And this is the perfect place to lip right back to tip 6, recording your voice. Record yourself talking about your job once a week for a month. You will have undeniable proof that you're getting smoother and more fluent. Repetition is the vehicle that moves language from slow, conscious effort to fast, subconscious retrieval.
So we've covered the entire system. We have the mindset for consistency and forgiveness. We have the input engine for listening and shadowing. And we have the output refinement for recording and pacing.
We do.
And now we come to the final pillar, tip 9, which is really the ultimate goal. It's about integration.
Making the language inescapable.
Yes. The tip is use English in daily life. This is where we stop treating English like some academic subject we study for an hour and then put back on the shelf.
And we start treating it like a necessary, pervasive tool for just living your life. The goal is to seamlessly weave English into the very fabric of your daily routine.
I think when people hear this, they often imagine something very difficult, like they have to go find a native speaker to have hours of conversation with every day.
Right, a huge high-stakes commitment.
But the source gives these specific, low-effort examples that are so simple anyone can do them right now. They leverage those tiny 2-minute chunks we talked about in tip 1.
Absolutely. Think about passive integration. Change the language on your phone or your computer to English.
That's a 5-second change.
It is. Change the language on Netflix or your video games. When you're out shopping, just take a second to read the small instruction signs in English. These are tiny, non-threatening moments.
But they force your brain to engage with the language in a real-world context.
Yes. Your brain is actively processing the language to achieve a goal, to navigate a menu, to understand an instruction, not just passively receiving information. The stakes are incredibly low, but the frequency is incredibly high.
But the most subtle and maybe the most powerful technique the source mentions here is the internal practice.
Thinking in English.
Yes. Even for the simplest, most immediate thoughts, like, I'm hungry, or I need to leave now, or I'm so tired.
And let me tell you why that internal thought is so absolutely critical for fluency.
Please do.
Internal thought is zero-risk practice.
Where?
You can make 1,000 mistakes in your head and no one will ever know. There's no fear, no embarrassment. But the real power is neurological.
Okay.
When you think in your native language, let's call it L1, and then try to speak English, L2, you are performing this complex, exhausting translation loop every single time. The thought starts in L1, you have to translate it to L2 structure and vocabulary, and then you can finally articulate it.
And that translation loop is exactly what slows down speech and causes all that friction and pausing.
It's the bottleneck. But when you consistently practice thinking directly in English, even for those basic concepts, you're actively training your brain to bypass that translation loop entirely. You're building a new pathway.
A direct pathway.
A direct pathway from the concept of hunger, straight to the English expression, I'm hungry. That instant, direct connection. That is the definition of true fluency. You are literally rewiring your brain's access point to the language.
And when you look at the conclusion of this tip in the source, it brings us right back full circle to where we started with tip 1, the power of accumulation.
It does. The source emphasizes tiny moments add up to significant structural growth. Changing your phone takes 5 seconds. Thinking I'm tired takes 1 second. But when you do this hundreds of times a day, those moments compound. They create profound changes in how your brain handles the language, turning it from an academic subject into an internalized natural tool.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the 10 pillars. Let's just synthesize them one last time using those 3 strategic groups we've identified.
Sounds good. We can really see the clear structure now. First, you have the foundational mindset and sustainability strategies.
That was tip 1, speak daily, just for 2 minutes.
Tip 2, don't worry about mistakes. See them as necessary signs of learning.
And tip 10, enjoy the process and celebrate those small wins.
And those 3 tips, they ensure you show up consistently and you forgive yourself when you're not perfect, which guarantees you'll be in it for the long haul.
Okay, group 2 was the input engine and acquisition strategies.
That's tip 3. Listen more than you speak to build that acoustic blueprint in your brain.
Tip 4, practice with shadowing to copy the rhythm and the music of the language.
And tip 5, learn phrases, not single words, to cut down on cognitive load and speed up your retrieval.
And those 3 ensure you're acquiring the language in a natural and really efficient way.
And finally, the 3rd group, the output refinement and reinforcement strategies.
Tip 6, record your voice for that objective self-assessment and to track your progress.
Tip 7, slow down your speaking. You have to prioritize clarity over speed.
In tip 8, Repeat the same topics to build that automaticity through rehearsal.
And those three ensure that what you're actually producing is deliberate, measurable, and always improving.
And then the final piece, tip 9, is the integration strategy. Using English in daily life, making it a functional, inescapable tool that just compounds your growth constantly.
It's an incredibly elegant and practical system. It's really designed specifically to chip away at that confidence barrier by giving you structure and measurable steps. The focus is never on one giant leap to perfection.
No, it's all about steady, guaranteed progress through consistent micro effort.
The power of this whole system, when you boil it all down, is that it gives you psychological safety combined with structured action.
You have permission to be imperfect.
But you also have a clear, simple path for what to do every single day.
And that really is the core message the source leaves us with, isn't it? Your English doesn't grow in one day. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and be perfectly fluent.
Not at all. But it grows a little every day. It's all about the process, not the outcome. And that process is defined by small, consistent effort and a radical, liberating acceptance of your own imperfection.
That is a powerful and just a highly actionable framework for anyone who's looking to move past that fear of speaking and into a place of consistent, sustainable growth. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive and for sharing these sources with us.
Of course.
We really hope this comprehensive breakdown gives you the confidence, but also the clear roadmap you need to immediately start enhancing your own English speaking flow.
And we've spent a lot of time today talking about how fluency isn't built by avoiding failure. It's built by embracing those small daily mistakes and really seeing them as necessary signs that you're learning. That mindset, it's paramount.
It is. So as you head back into your day, here's a final thought for you to mull over and maybe to act on. If growth requires embracing imperfection, what is one major fear of failure related to your speaking? Maybe it's mispronouncing a specific word that always trips you up, or maybe it's a fear of using the wrong tense. What is one specific fear that you can intentionally decide to discard this week?
Give yourself permission to make that one specific mistake, either publicly or just in your private practice. Do it on purpose, just to see what happens.
Just to make a little more room for that natural, necessary growth.
Take care and keep speaking. We'll see you on the next deep dive.